my watch, and I don't like the rubbery feeling it has. So originally, I made this leather thing to help protect my skin from the rubber feeling. But today I'm improving upon that leather thing by making a new leather thing. I started out by tracing my watch bands onto some reclaimed upholstery leather, harvesting my buckle, tracing the little watch part itself, drinking some mate, and then continuing on with the sewing. The way I formatted this was so that the back of the watch slipped into 2 leather slits, and then it has a detachable front face that allows me to remove the watch inside when it finally needs a battery change. Though I've had it for 3 years and counting, and it hasn't needed a new battery yet. But I didn't want to forever encase it into leather. After a little bit of stitching, I had a beautiful leather watch band that won't make my wrist feel icky. Sometimes mending is about prolonging the life of the item. So these shoes I've had for almost 3 years, and they're starting to get pretty rough. But with a little bit of stitching, a little bit of TLC, I think these guys will last the rest of the summer and maybe even to next summer. So, this pile of fabric is 4 blankets. They were woven in half to maximize the width. And now I need to start finishing them. In order to finish them, they need to be double zigzagged on each edge. The 4 blankets are separated by this white stripe. And once those are double zigzagged, I can then remove these middle strings. This is where the blanket folded in half on the loop. Once that's pulled and the edges are zigzagged, then the blanket is ready for a crocheted or blanket stitched border. Harken back to these hand-woven blankets. The edges were double zigzagged and then I crocheted all around with a single crochet. Once that was done, you kind of tease the threads back in, trim them close but not too close, because the next step is fulling. I was able to use a top-loading washing machine. You need an old one for this, lots of water that goes swish, 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 swish. The new ones that conserve water do not felt blankets well. Once it's fulled, you see how much it shrinks? Quite lovely. Once it's fulled, you can go in and trim all the little fluffies. And since they're slightly felted or fulled, they'll remain stable after you trim them. But take care not to trim your crocheted edges. Snip, 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 snip. And your little fluffy pile will grow, and the edges will look more and more crisp and clean, and you'll have a whole lot of little fluffs. But when you're done, you can put them in the wash again, rinse, and spin them dry. And then I hung them up on a line to dry, as these are wool, and they will continue to shrink. A perfect gift for 2 forest trolls. Southern Highland Craft Guild is an amazing place, an oasis of the arts, also a huge tourist trap. But I went there to see one of my good friends' graduation exhibit, and it was beautiful. A hand-woven burial shroud, receiving blanket, and dress, beautifully stitched, each representing one of the Norns. I'm taking apart an old pair of punk pants. Snippety snip snip snip. This is what they looked like before. Lovely. And this is now what they look like, ready to be made into something new. Come back for part 2. Now those punk pants have been taken apart, it's time for turning them into yardage. I need to mend all of the holes that had needed mending for a long time, but now definitely need to. I admire some of my old patchwork. These are a lot of my original screen prints from long, long ago. Some of my first endeavors into mending. I was a big fan of the zigzag stitch. I patch up the pockets, back pockets, and I also cut the pants so that they are more square. So I get 2 large rectangular-ish pieces. Then I trace 2 of my favorite shirts, sort of combine them into the pattern that I'll be using today. Cut that out, and I have the front and back of a new shirt. Sewing it all together, I get to try it on for the first time. I'm a fan, I like it. Hemming everything. I'll hem up the edges, do the top stitching, and on the inside I'll do a zigzag on those edges to help prevent fraying, which is a little bit of a lost cause at this point, but I try. I finish up the neckline, the armholes, and then I added 2 big old pockets on the front, which I've become quite a fan of in recent days. They're very useful, as the weight of the stuff in your pockets is on your shoulders and not trying to pull down your pants. I wanted a modern medieval tunic, so I took my favorite shirt pattern and started cutting it out a little longer on an old tablecloth I got. That's the basis of the body. I measured the sleeve sections to get the width of the sleeves, and all of this I'm writing down because this is technically a mock-up for another shirt tunic that I'm going to make with hand-woven fabric. So pinned it all together, and my sister helped me, which was wonderful to have an assistant, and it's huge, it's humongous. So I decided to take out a lot of that extra in the sleeve because that's no good. It ended up being like 3 inches, I'm also using French seams on this project, which I enjoy because they make a really nice clean interior, which isn't itchy or scratchy and holds up to a bunch of washing. Bob and break, and this is what the basics of it look like. I have a little armpit gusset, and then I made a neckline, and it was bad. But I did my best, and it looks very Peter Pan-ish. It is, it's the medieval look. The neckline is bad. Ooh, yes, look at that. Very nice. Yeah. So I went to bed and I had a dream of how to fix it. And this is how I went about that. So I pulled a thread from either side of the neckline, and that just gives you a nice straight line to cut down. Cut off the sleeves like this. That allowed me to unsew the collar, and then I looked up a YouTube video on how to do a faced neckline, which was amazing. I laid it out, lots of pins is the key, and I remembered my machine can do embroidery stitches. I picked this one because it reminds me of Futhark runes, and did that around that stitching on the neckline. And it looks like this. I'm quite pleased with it. I did another decorative stitch to hold down that facing. This is what it looks like on. It's very simple. It doesn't itch or scratch. Following a tutorial from C-Trick, I put in these 2 welt pockets, which I think are quite cute. I did not make them quite right, so that's the gathering on either side. Then I needed to fix the space on the sides. So I created a gore. You cut it like that, and it gives you 2 triangles, one that must be stitched up the center and one full one. Pieced it all together, lost all my footage for piecing it together. So that's the outside. The previous shot was the inside, and this is what it looks like on. It's much more fitted. It's very comfortable. I have a lot of range of motion. It completely covers my posterior, and it's got lots of pockets. What could you ask more?